Alright, so I am going to do the Pet Finder app, which is an Angular app that allows a person to look up animals that they'd like to adopt, and then to adopt an animal. Right, the main point is to make API calls to our backend database. So remember, if you want to do stuff, you're going to have to make sure that your backend database is open. So that is the Unit 8 project. I'm going to fire Visual Studio just to make certain you know what that is. Unit 8 Angular C# backend. Alright, so we're not going to run this right now because we're going to just get started building Angular. But you need to have this running in order for any data to actually be passed to the front end. Alright, I'm starting off with the command prompt. This is the folder I want the app to appear in, so ng new pet finder. So I want routing, of course, and CSS is fine. And then it will take a few seconds or minutes, depending on your internet connection, for it to install the npm packages. It has to download and install them. Alright, so it's done. So I'm going to change directory into Pet Finder, and then I'm going to type code space dot to open it up in Visual Studio Code. So that'll take a second. And here we are. So now we are in Visual Studio Code. So we are going to take a look at our Angular app. So again, it's a framework, so that means there's a lot of stuff that comes out of the box. A lot of these files you don't really care about. The app is going to be in the src source file. Okay, we've got the app itself, which is in the app folder. Assets are for like image files, Excel files, anything that's sort of static. And the environments file are just for the different like API URLs or any sort of configuration you might need, depending on whether it's prod or dev, etc. This is just like app settings.json. Outside of that, there's nothing much to really say on these other ones. You may have to do something with angular.json, and you may have to do something with package.json, but other than that, most of the other stuff is just, you just leave it as it is. I wouldn't touch it. Alright, so we need to kind of think about our app. So there's going to be a component that will list all the pets. So let's start working on that first. I'm going to go to terminal and make sure I'm in command prompt. Right. I'm going to do a little bit of getting started with the folder structure. So I'm going to make an interfaces folder. And then I'm going to make, didn't mean to open that. I'm going to make a components folder and a services folder. And then rename this because I need an R there. There we go. Alright, so does it have to be this way? Of course not. You can use whatever, as long as, like, I wouldn't touch this, like, don't touch source and don't touch app. But within app, you can have your own folder structure. We're going to start off by making the interface for a pet. So what I mean by that is our API returns as a pet, which is this lovely C# class. But this is C#, not TypeScript, so we need to kind of port this over into our Angular app. So we can do that. I'm going to generate an interface. So ng, G stands for generate, but I don't want to type all that out, so just do G. And then interface, but I don't want to type the whole thing out, so just do I. And it's in the interfaces folder, /, and then I'm going to call this pet. Alright, and then you'll notice it will make a pet.ts, which we will open. And then we are going to simply put pet ID, and then we're going to look at some others. So name, breed, cost. Name would be a string, breed would be a string, cost would be a number, is adopted would be a boolean. Was there any other properties that this thing had? Image name, which is a string. Okay, so now this interface will basically be the data I get back from my API. So interface is done. I'm going to save it, Control S, and then I can exit out of it. So now I've got my pet.ts. So now I'm going to make my service. nggs API service. Actually, we're going to put it inside the services folder. So we're going to do this. Remember, you don't have to actually write the word service after it. It will add the word service. So we can just put API. API service.ts. Alright, so this is our service. Remember, services are where we're going to, like, do stuff, like business logic, or calling, like, the data layer. So these things, the service will do all of that stuff. But we're going to need the HTTP client in order to do these things. So that's going to be a module. So we're going to go here, and we're going to do import. So app by here the app.module.ts. This is where you put your components and your modules that you need. Remember, modules are like libraries. HTTP client module from, and I think it's common HTTP. Yeah. Right, Angular common HTTP. And remember, you see how it's grayed out? It's because it isn't being used. So you gotta go in your imports and put your client module here. Right, that way Angular knows, hey, I've got a client module, and now you can use it throughout your whole Angular app. All right, I'm going to save and then close this file, and then go back to my service, api.service.ts. Click that, and I'm going to inject the client into my constructor. So I'm going to do private client HTTP client. I hit tab, so that way, remember, if you hit tab, the IntelliSense will go ahead and import stuff for you, which is nice. So now I've got my HTTP client. So now I need to make my functions in my service to go call the API, get the data, and return it. So the first one's going to be pretty straightforward. We need to get all the pets. So this will be get all pets. Has no input, and it will return an observable, which is an array of pets. Remember, it's more than one pet. All right, observable comes from the RxJS library, and then we have pet, which is the thing we made, and so we are now going to use this HTTP client to make a call to our API. Let's also make certain that in our environments we've got the correct stuff. So let's go to environment.ts, and inside the object I'm going to do API URL colon, and then I'm going to go figure out what it is. If you don't remember your API URL, it's no big deal. We're going to go back to Visual Studio or C# project, and we're going to run it. We're going to see what port it runs under. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of context switching when working with Angular. You'll probably have to go back to your web API and look up stuff, unless you document it. All right, come back here. Let's go. And then so you see how it says localhost and it's colon means port, and it's 7158. So if I want to get all pets, I need to use this endpoint. You can, if you do execute, you can actually look using curl. So like right here, see how I'm going to do it again. So I did try it out and then execute. And then right here, you'll see that this is literally like what you need to pass in as the endpoint. So that way, request URL right here. That way you can know like, hey, this is what it's expecting in order to get this information. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the first part because everything begins with this. Go back to Visual Studio Code, and then let's put this. So that my base URL is this, localhost 7158/API/. All right, and I'm going to save this and exit. All right, and the reason I did that is because I want to be able to just, reuse that environment variable. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to return this means the API service, client, .get, and it will return an array of pets. And then inside the parentheses is the URL. So we're going to use environment.api URL plus pet. Right, and again, we go back to our API. Notice that it's supposed to have pet at the end in order for it to get the resource. So this is going to be our endpoint. And when all is said and done, it will go ahead and give us an array of pets. I also know that later on I'm going to need to get pets by ID. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Get pet by ID. It will take in a number and return an observable of a single pet. Okay, because getting pet by ID means I want a specific pet, not a group of pets. Then I'm going to return this .client.get, and it's going to return one pet. Environment.api URL plus pet. And then let's go back to actually here and let's go see what it wants. So get pet by ID. I'm going to just try it out, put one in here. All right, I'm going to look at this URL. So it wants to do pet, get pet by ID, and then, so this is the ending part. So see how it has this parameter at the end? This question mark means, hey, the URL's done. Everything after me is a parameter. Yeah, once I put it here, you'll see. So basically, what this question mark means here is that everything before it is just a regular URL. Everything after it's going to be a parameter. Okay, like some sort of variable. That's how the computer knows like when the URL stops. So then I can do get pet by ID, and there we go. So now we've got the two functions we're going to need for our API service in order for it to do its job. Okay, remember, these are, the client here is called a dependency, and this is called dependency injection. The API service's job is to call the API and get information on pets. It cannot do that without this client. It would be impossible. So that's why we call it a dependency. It needs it. Alright, so I'm going to save and then exit out of here. And so now I got my services, I got my interfaces. Let's go ahead and do the component. So I'm going to generate the component, ng, g, c, list pets. I'll actually just do components / list pets so we can put it in the folder. Cool. So as you can see, it made 4 files for me. So I've got my, everything's pretty much set up. So I'm going to go to my TS file. All right, so I know I'm going to need my API service because the API service is responsible for getting the information. This component needs it. So I'm going to do API service here. Okay, so this is my dependency injection. All right, and so I'm going to make a function down here to get all pets. All right, and so get all pets is going to grab is asking the service to go to the API to get all the pets. So I need a variable to store the pets I get back from the API. So remember, this list pets component is a class, so therefore it has properties. So we're going to make a property. I'm going to say the pet, it's called pets, which is an array of pets, and its starting value will just be a blank array. Like when the component first comes into existence, well, there's no pets because we haven't called the API yet. All right, so now that I have a property called pets, I can store the pets that the API gives back to me. So let's call the API. So this .service .get all pets. Okay, so we're calling that get all pets function .subscribe. Okay, we're going to use an anonymous function here. Okay, data is an array of pets. Arrow, this .pets equals data. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Were you angry before? Oh yeah, here we go. I forgot the thing. There we go. I have one extra one over here. There we go. So now what this means is, hey, call this get all pets. Remember, get all pets returns an observable. Okay, we're going to subscribe to that observable. So whenever the API gets done doing its thing, give me back an array of pets and set this property on line 14 to whatever I get back from the API. So it will load all the pets. As it stands now, get all pets is just a function that sits here and does nothing. I want to call this function when the component loads. So on initialization, so ng on init is a function that is always called when the component comes to life, when it comes into existence. So we're going to do this get all pets. That way, when the component loads, when the component opens and someone comes to here, it will just load all the pets. All right, so that was cool. We're going to then go save this. Okay, so we should be good here. Let's work on the HTML file. All right, I'm going to go ahead and install Bootstrap. npm install Bootstrap. Okay, it may take a second. Okay, that part's cool. Then I'm going to go to angular.json. And there's two things I got to add. I got to find, here we go, styles and scripts. Styles is on line 29. Scripts is on line 32. I'm going to go grab from the thing. There we go. So it should look like this. Node modules, blah, 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 .css is under styles. And then the JS file is under scripts. This is just so that Angular knows that it should use the CSS for the whole app. Okay, so we're going to save. Now Bootstrap's done. So I'm not, let's do some Bootstrap magic then. Let's just do div class equals row. Div class equals column 12. This column will take up the whole screen. And then div class equals text center, because I want the text to be in the center of the screen. And we'll do an H1 and do pet finder. So we'll have a banner at the top. And then we can do div class equals row. Div class equals column 2. So I want to have basically some white space to the left and right of my array of pets, of all my pets I'm going to show. And so since I've used 4 columns already, there's 12 columns per row, so I only have 8 left. So I'm going to put everything else in the middle in a size 8 column. Alright, so here's the mind-bendy part. You can put a row inside a column. So I'm going to do another row. Okay, and then this row can be divided up into 12 columns, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use cards here. So I'm going to go basically use ng4. So basically what I want to do is inside this row, for each animal that I get back from the API, I want to have a card that takes up about let's say a fourth of the space of this row. So I can make a column 3. Div class equals column 3, so we'll take up a fourth of the space of the row. And then I want to do this for each pet, so I'm going to do ng4 equals let pet. And I chose the word pet. It's a variable. You can choose what you want to call it. It doesn't matter. But let pet of pets. And this pets comes from the component. See, I have pets on line 14. That's where I got that from. All right. For the sake, and then I'm going to put a card here from Bootstrap. Alright, so what I did was I went to Bootstrap and then got their card, HTML, and pasted it here. The main point is wherever there was something variable, like for example, the image will change based on the pet. So we put all of our pet images and assets. I'm going to move them over in a second. But I want to do assets / and then whatever the image file for that particular pet. Remember, pet's a variable. It will loop through all the pets, so each one of these will be different. Then I want to show the pet's name and the pet's breed. I'm actually going to talk about this in a little bit. We'll do this when we talk about getting the details of the pet. But for right now, I wanted to show the image name, the name of the pet, and the breed. Remember, to use variables, you got to use these double curly braces. Alright, so I've got all my files here, cat1.jpg, dog1.jpg, etc. I'm going to just get rid of this for the moment. That's fine, leave it there. Alright, so I've got everything together. The last thing I got to do is actually be able to show the list of pets. So I'm going to go to the app.component.html, which is the root HTML file. It comes with a bunch of boilerplate stuff. I'm just going to do Control-A and backspace to get rid of all of it because I don't want it. And then I'm going to go ahead and show the list of pets. So I do app-list-pets inside of these brackets, and if you're wondering where I got this from, if you go back to the component TS file, you'll notice it has what's called a selector, and that's where it comes from. You can customize this, but I don't, I don't see why. Just leave it like this. It's perfectly fine. All right, so everything should be good. So we're going to save all, and we're going to test it out. I'm going to make certain that this is running. Okay, it's running. Good. All right, then we'll do ng-serve. It takes a second. Alright, whatever, don't care about that. Let's open up 4200, and there's my pets. Alrighty, so you can see that each one of these pets has an image. They have the name of the pet and then the breed of the pet. These buttons for the moment don't do anything. In the next video we'll make them do something, but at the very least we can see that we have a list of pets with images. If you want to play around with the CSS, you can. You can go to the listpetscomponent.css, and let's go ahead and actually make their images all the same. Oops, I want to be here. Right, so I'm going to go to the CSS file, and I'm going to make each image. So remember, for classes you use dot, for IDs you use hashtag, But if it's like one of the base tags like image or H1 or P, you can just target it by using its name. So I want to make each of the images like 285 by 285. So if I save the CSS, notice how now all the images are nice and like uniform. But also notice that for some of the images they're now like they're a little bit stretched or may not look so good. That's because CSS resizing images is not always great. That's why normally you do the images yourself to make sure that they look the way you want to look, and don't let CSS resize them for you because you may not like the result. Alright, so we did our list view for pets. In the next video we're going to be able to click this details button and then look at the detail for pet.